On the night I made $18,600 selling my photography, my mother walked into my gallery and demanded I leave to babysit for free. I was 34 years old, and for years they called me the flexible one, the reliable one, the free help. So I did something I had never done before. I read her email out loud, in front of everyone. And when my father admitted he saw it and said nothing, I realized I was never family. I was staff. And that was the night I quit. Chapter 1. By 6 o'clock that evening, I had already changed twice. The first outfit was practical. Jeans, a loose cotton shirt, my hair clipped back while I ran up and down the stairs of my parents' Colonial in Naperville, Illinois. The second was strategic. A simple black dress that would not draw attention, low heels that would not scuff the hardwood floors, hair down but controlled, presentable, neutral, easy to overlook. The house looked like a magazine spread, white pillars, symmetrical windows, hydrangeas blooming along the walkway. The kind of house people in our church like to point at and say, they did well for themselves. I had arranged every detail inside it. I set the catering trays along the dining table, labeled the lemon chicken and the roasted vegetables with handwritten place cards, adjusted the seating chart 3 times because my mother did not want the Collinses next to the Parkers. I tested the slideshow of old photos from 1983, their wedding day, their honeymoon in Maui, my sister Sienna in pigtails, me standing slightly behind her in almost every picture. 30 guests were expected, church friends, neighbors from our subdivision, 2 of my father's HVAC clients and their wives. I had texted confirmations, coordinated the bakery pickup, ironed table linens. My name was nowhere on the invitation. I was not technically a guest. I was logistics. By the time people began arriving, my mother, Marilyn Whitmore, 62, had already stepped into her role. Pearl earrings, soft blue dress, a smile that signaled both warmth and control. My father, Richard Whitmore, 64, shook hands near the front door, his voice steady, proud. He owned a small but successful HVAC company built from scratch in the 90s. He liked to remind people of that. Sienna arrived 20 minutes late, breathless and glowing in a way I had learned to recognize as performance. She was 31, a realtor with a sharp Instagram presence and 2 4-year-old twins who ran circles around the foyer until I crouched down to redirect them toward the backyard. Derek followed behind her, already checking his phone. He worked in sales for a building materials company and had perfected the art of nodding without listening. I kept moving, refilling water glasses, adjusting the thermostat, wiping fingerprints off the kitchen island. At some point, I realized I had not sat down once. When my mother tapped her glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention, I was in the hallway smoothing a wrinkle from a tablecloth. I stepped into the living room just in time to see her lift her champagne flute. 40 years, she said, her voice bright and practiced. 40 years of love, faith, and family. Applause. She thanked God, she thanked their friends, she thanked my father for being her rock. Then she smiled wider. And to celebrate, she said, Richard and I are finally taking that trip back to Hawaii in August. More applause. Someone whistled. We have not been back since our honeymoon in 1983, she added, glancing at the slideshow now paused on a sun-bleached beach. My father nodded. It felt rehearsed. Sienna gasped theatrically. That is amazing, Mom. My mother continued. We're making it a family trip. Sienna and Derek and the kids are coming with us. There was another round of delighted murmurs. I felt the air shift slightly around me, a small tightening in my chest. I waited for my name to follow. It did not. Instead, my mother tilted her head slightly and said casually, Of course, someone has to stay behind and keep things steady here. She turned toward me then, as if remembering I existed. Alara will stay in Illinois for a few weeks and help with the twins before school starts. She's flexible. She doesn't have anything major scheduled. A couple of people glanced at me. One of the churchwomen gave me a sympathetic smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I blinked once, then twice. I thought maybe she was joking. I waited for the punchline. It did not come. I stepped forward. So I'm not going? My voice sounded calmer than I felt. My mother tilted her head slightly. Alara, you know how chaotic August is with the kids. Sienna needs support. You work from home anyway. It makes sense. Sienna chimed in quickly. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. You're just so good with them. Just so good. Derek added, It's only a few weeks. It's not like you had plans, right? A soft laugh rippled somewhere near the dining room. I could feel 30 pairs of eyes measuring my reaction. I asked again, slower this time. So I'm not part of the trip? My mother's smile thinned, but it stayed in place. Every family needs someone who is willing to sacrifice a little. You don't have children yet. You'll understand one day. There it was. Not an invitation, an assignment. I nodded once because I didn't trust myself to say anything sharper. I looked at my father. He avoided my eyes for half a second before lifting his glass again and thanking everyone for coming. The conversation dissolved into smaller clusters. Someone complimented the catering, someone else asked about flight prices. The twins ran past me and I instinctively reached out to stop one from knocking over a vase. I moved toward the kitchen, muscle memory taking over, clearing plates, reheating appetizers. Inside, something had shifted. I wasn't angry in the explosive way people expect. I wasn't crying. I was cataloging. Cataloging the way my mother had framed it as practical, the way Sienna had leaned into the narrative that I was available, the way Derek had assumed my schedule was empty without asking, the way my father had chosen silence. A woman from church stepped beside me at the sink. You're such a blessing to your family, she said quietly. I smiled automatically. Thank you. Blessing, flexible, good with the kids, no major plans. The language was always soft. It was the outcome that was hard. Later that night, after the last guests had left and Sienna had loaded the twins into her SUV, my mother stood at the kitchen counter reviewing leftover trays. We'll finalize dates next week, she said without looking at me. I'll need you to block off August 3rd through the 25th. I have a client meeting that month. She waved it off. Reschedule. It's family. I opened my mouth, closed it. Family. I walked into the pantry under the pretense of checking supplies and let the door close behind me. The house hummed with the low sound of the dishwasher starting its cycle. I pulled my phone from my clutch. The screen lit up, reflecting faintly against the shelves of canned soup and paper towels. There was something on that phone that none of them knew I had seen. Not a feeling, not a suspicion. Proof. I had read it 3 weeks ago. I had stared at it until the words blurred. I took a screenshot and sent it to myself just in case. I scrolled through my photos, stopping just short of opening it again. I didn't need to reread it to remember the exact phrasing. Flexible, nothing important. Free help. I leaned back against the pantry wall and let the air leave my lungs slowly. The Hawaii trip wasn't the betrayal, it was the confirmation. I had spent years believing I was choosing to help, that I was generous, that I was needed. Standing in that perfectly organized kitchen, I realized I had never been part of the plan. I was the contingency, the backup, the person who stayed. I locked my phone and slipped it back into my purse. In the living room, my parents were discussing flight options for August. My mother's voice carried, bright and efficient. I stepped back into the kitchen and began stacking plates for the dishwasher. The dishwasher clicked shut. The lights in the dining room dimmed one by one. I stood alone in the kitchen, the glow from my phone screen briefly illuminating the dark before it went black again. Chapter 2. 3 weeks earlier, I had been sitting at that same kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen that kept running out of ink. My mother had asked me to help finalize the guest list for their anniversary party. She liked things precise, titles spelled correctly, couples seated in ways that reflected old alliances and unspoken rivalries within our church community. I was crossing out one name and rewriting another when she stood up and said she needed to grab something from the basement freezer. Her laptop was open in front of me. I had not intended to look. At least, that is what I told myself. An email notification slid into view at the top of the screen. The subject line caught my eye because my name was in it. August Arrangements, Ilara Situation. My hands hovered over the trackpad. I glanced toward the basement door, listening for the hum of the freezer opening. Nothing yet. I clicked. The email thread opened without hesitation, like it had been waiting. My mother had written to Sienna the night before. Keep Ilara in Illinois during the August trip. It makes more sense. She does not have anything important going on, and the kids are more comfortable with her. It's like having free help. We should take advantage of that. I felt my throat tighten. Below it, Sienna had replied, I think she will actually like feeling useful for once. Just tell her it is temporary. Feeling useful for once. The words did not shout. They sat there, ordinary and casual, as if they were discussing which hotel to book. I read the message again, slower this time, not to misunderstand, not to overreact, to make sure I was not imagining the tone. Free help. Useful for once. My first reaction was not anger, it was recognition. They had said versions of this for years, not in writing, not so plainly, but always there. You're good with the kids, you're flexible, you can work from anywhere, you do not have a family yet. The difference now was that it was documented. My heart started beating faster. I heard the basement door creak open below. I had maybe a minute. I took my phone from the table and angled it carefully over the laptop screen. I made sure the entire thread was visible, the names, the timestamps, the phrasing. I snapped 2 photos, just in case the first was blurry. Then I emailed the image to myself with no subject line, just the attachment. I closed the email window, I moved the cursor back to the guest list spreadsheet, I picked up my pen. By the time my mother returned upstairs, I was asking her whether we should seat the Parkers near the patio doors. She answered without noticing anything different. The rest of that afternoon unfolded normally. We discussed catering quantities and floral arrangements. I left around 6, drove back to my apartment in silence, and carried the screenshot with me like a weight in my purse. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table in my 1-bedroom apartment and opened the image again. It looked even worse in my own inbox. I zoomed in on the phrase free help. I zoomed in on Sienna's reply about feeling useful for once. I did not cry. Instead, I opened another tab and pulled up my credit report. It was something I had been meaning to do for years and had never prioritized. I told myself it was responsible to check, especially after co-signing for my father back in 2019. He had come to me that spring with numbers and spreadsheets. The HVAC business was growing. He needed to expand, hire 2 more technicians, invest in new equipment before summer demand hit. The bank wanted an additional signature to secure the loan. It's just a formality, he had said. We have always paid our debts. I believed him. I signed. At the time, I didn't think of it as risk. I thought of it as family. Now, staring at the glowing screen in my apartment, I scrolled through line after line of financial history. The loan had been paid off in 2022. There were no missed payments, no red flags. But that wasn't the point. The point was that my name had been attached to something significant without me fully understanding the implications. If the business had failed, it would have been my credit, my future mortgage, my security. I closed the report and opened my banking app. $14,200 in savings. If I cut my expenses aggressively, I could survive 4, maybe 5 months without steady income. I calculated rent, utilities, groceries, health insurance, gas. I had a few bookkeeping clients who paid me irregularly, enough to stay afloat, not enough to build anything substantial. Then I opened my email again and searched for Marcus Cole. He had reached out to me 2 months earlier after seeing my photography page online. He owned Cole Contemporary in Carmel by the Sea, California. He had written that my work felt intimate and observant. He asked whether I had ever considered a solo show. At the time, I had read the email 3 times and then closed it. California felt far, unrealistic, indulgent. Now it felt like a door I had been pretending not to see. I reread the message again. He proposed a meeting to discuss a potential exhibition in fall 2024. There were no guarantees, just a conversation. My mother's words echoed in my head. Nothing important going on. I looked around my apartment. A couch I'd bought secondhand, a small desk by the window where I edited photos late at night, prints leaning against the wall because I couldn't afford proper framing yet. Nothing important. The phrase began to lose its power. I picked up my phone and called my Aunt Ruth. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and slightly hoarse from a long day at her cafe. "You sound tired," she said before I even spoke. I told her about the email. I read the exact words out loud. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then she said, "They're not upset that you have nothing going on. They're upset that you might." I swallowed. She continued, "If you were free help, you wouldn't need to be persuaded. They wouldn't need to justify it to each other." I laughed once, short and brittle. "I have $14,000 in savings, that's it." "That's more than I had when I left my marriage," she replied calmly. "You don't need perfect timing, you need enough." I told her about Marcus, about the possibility of a show. "Come here, stay upstairs at the cafe, work mornings with me until you figure it out. You don't owe anyone your availability." We stayed on the phone for nearly an hour. She didn't try to convince me. She simply spoke as if my leaving was an option, not a rebellion. After we hung up, I opened a flight search page. One way to San Jose in mid-July. I hovered over the purchase button for a few minutes. I thought about my parents' kitchen, about the anniversary party, about August in Hawaii without me. I thought about the screenshots sitting in my inbox. I clicked confirm. The confirmation email arrived seconds later. I felt no surge of adrenaline, no dramatic swell of courage, just a quiet shift. I would finish the anniversary party, I would smile, I would nod when necessary, but I would not block off August for babysitting. I closed my laptop and walked to the window in my apartment. Outside, the streetlights in Naperville cast a pale glow over identical lawns and neatly trimmed hedges. For years, I had told myself that staying close meant staying loyal. Now, I was beginning to understand that staying silent had been the real habit. I turned off the lights in my apartment and lay down on my bed without changing. My phone buzzed once with a promotional email, not from my family, not from anyone asking for anything. In the dark, I felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not revenge, possibility. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like free help. I felt like someone about to leave. Chapter 3. I did not tell anyone until the ticket was already paid for. When I mentioned California at dinner 2 weeks later, my mother did not ask why. She asked how long. "Just a while," I said. "I want to focus on photography." She pressed her lips together and nodded once. "Do not make this dramatic, Ilara. You are not running away." My father cleared his throat and asked whether I would keep my bookkeeping clients. Sienna looked up from her phone and said, "So this is like a creative gap year." No one offered to help me pack. The morning I left in July of 2023, my car was loaded before sunrise. 2 suitcases, a box of framed prints wrapped in towels, my camera gear, and a small plastic container of family photos I had taken from my old bedroom closet. My mother stood on the porch in a light cardigan despite the summer heat. "Call when you get there," she said. "I will," I replied. She hugged me briefly. It felt polite. My father shook my hand first, then pulled me into a one-armed hug that ended quickly. Sienna did not come out. She texted me a thumbs-up emoji. I drove west alone. The landscape shifted gradually from flat stretches of Illinois highway to mountains and coastal cliffs. By the time I reached Carmel by the sea, my shoulders ached and my mind felt both emptied and overfilled. Aunt Ruth's Cafe sat on a quiet corner a few blocks from the ocean. White exterior, blue trim, a chalkboard menu that changed daily. She was waiting outside when I pulled up, wiping her hands on an apron dusted with flour. "You made it," she said, smiling wide. She hugged me tightly, not cautiously. The room upstairs had a slanted ceiling and a narrow window that faced the street. It was small, but it was mine. I unpacked slowly, placing my camera on the desk, setting my laptop by the window, lining up 3 framed prints along the wall. The next morning, I woke at 5:30 to the sound of the espresso machine warming up downstairs. Working at the cafe was simple. Coffee orders, pastry trays, wiping tables, regulars who knew Ruth by name and asked about her dog. The rhythm grounded me. From 6 until noon, I belonged to the counter. After that, I belonged to myself. In the afternoons, I walked along the coastline with my camera. I photographed women sitting alone on benches, mothers adjusting sun hats on toddlers, elderly couples holding hands. Moments that would have looked ordinary to anyone else. I sent Marcus an email confirming that I had relocated and was ready to meet. He replied within a day. "Let us schedule something next week." Cole Contemporary was minimalist and bright. White walls, natural light, carefully spaced works. Marcus was taller than I expected, mid-40s, composed in a way that suggested both confidence and caution. He walked through my portfolio in silence for several minutes. "Your work notices what people try to hide," he said finally. I was not sure whether that was a compliment. We discussed a possible solo exhibition in September of 2024. 12 pieces, a theme centered on invisibility in everyday life. He was clear about expectations. "I do not promise sales," he said. "I promise exposure and a fair contract." 60-40 split, he continued. "You receive 60% of any sales. We handle marketing and opening night logistics." It sounded unreal and practical at the same time. Over the next months, I balanced shifts at the cafe with editing sessions that stretched into the evening. I researched California business requirements and met with a local attorney, Daniel Ruiz, to untangle any lingering financial ties back home. He reviewed my old cosign documents. "The loan was paid off in 2022, he confirmed. "You are no longer liable. But I recommend separating yourself completely. No more cosigning, no shared accounts." I nodded. "If they ask," he added gently, "you are allowed to say no." That sentence lingered with me longer than the legal advice. In January of 2024, I filed paperwork to establish Elara Whitmore Photography as an LLC. It felt official in a way that posting on social media never had. I opened a business checking account. I transferred a portion of my savings into it as seed money. The first time I wrote the company name on a document, my hand trembled slightly. The months moved quickly after that. Spring light changed the quality of my photographs. Marcus checked in periodically, asking for updates on new pieces. By early summer, we had finalized the exhibition date for mid-September of 2024. I signed the contract in his office, the paper crisp and heavy. I sent my parents a short email about the show. I did not invite them explicitly. I simply informed them. My mother replied 3 days later, "We are proud of you for staying busy." The phrasing was careful. In August of 2024, 1 month before the opening, my phone rang while I was editing a series of portraits. It was Sienna. I almost let it go to voicemail. I answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was strained. "I'm pregnant again," she said without preamble. "3rd baby. Derek is traveling nonstop. I'm exhausted." "Congratulations," I replied automatically. There was a pause. "Can you come back for a few months?" she asked. "Just until things settle down. You work remotely. You could bring your camera. It's not like you have anything too major happening, right? The words landed differently now. I stared at the half-edited image on my screen. I have the exhibition next month, I said. It's just pictures, Ilara. I closed my eyes briefly. It's not just pictures. She exhaled sharply. Family should come first. I let the silence stretch. You're used to having me, I said finally. That's not the same as needing me. Her voice shifted defensively. I thought you would want to help. I have helped, for years. The call ended without resolution. I sat in the quiet room above the cafe, the ocean audible in the distance through the open window. My heart was racing, not because she had asked, but because for a moment I had considered saying yes. I imagined driving back to Illinois, putting my camera in storage, postponing the exhibition, telling Marcus something had come up. The fear of failure whispered that it would be safer. If no one showed up to the gallery, at least I could tell myself I had chosen family instead. But another fear was louder. The fear of slipping back into a life where my value was measured by availability. The next afternoon, I met Marcus to finalize the printed catalog details. He slid the contract across the desk for a final signature. You look distracted, he said. Family stuff, I admitted. He studied me for a moment. You are allowed to take up space, Ilara. That's not arrogance, it's professionalism. I picked up the pen. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I thought about the kitchen in Naperville, about the phrase free help, about the way my mother had said flexible. Then I signed my name. Not small, not apologetic, clear. When I handed the contract back to Marcus, something inside me settled into place. I was not running, I was choosing. And for the first time, being seen felt less frightening than being invisible. Chapter 4. The afternoon of my opening moved too slowly and too fast at the same time. By 4:30, I was already at Cole Contemporary, even though doors would not open until 6. I told myself I wanted to check the lighting one more time, but the truth was I could not sit upstairs at Aunt Ruth's cafe pretending this was an ordinary Friday. Carmel by the Sea looked postcard perfect that evening. The air carried salt from the ocean and a faint sweetness from eucalyptus trees lining the street. The storefront windows of the gallery reflected a pale gold sunset, and for a brief moment I saw myself in the glass. Black dress, hair loose but controlled, shoulders back. I looked like someone who belonged there. Inside, the white walls felt almost intimidating. 12 pieces hung in careful alignment, each framed in matte black, evenly spaced. The labels were minimal: title, year, medium, available, midnight shift, after everyone sleeps. The work felt more exposed on the walls than it ever had on my laptop screen. Marcus stood near the back wall, adjusting a spotlight by a fraction. You are early, he said, without turning. I could not stay away, I replied. He stepped back and surveyed the room, then looked at me. It reads clearly, he said. There is a thread. I nodded. I did not trust myself to say more. Aunt Ruth arrived just before 5, carrying a tray of lemon bars and a small bouquet of wildflowers wrapped in brown paper. She set everything down near the refreshment table and came straight to me. You look like you are about to walk into surgery, she said. It feels similar, I admitted. She cupped my face briefly. Remember, you already did the hard part. You made the work. At 5:30, Lydia Park from Carmel Living walked in with her notepad and camera bag. She wore a neutral blazer and an expression that was attentive without being invasive. I posted the preview this afternoon, she said. Good response so far. I felt a flicker of something in my stomach. From who? Locals, she said. Some on your followers. It is resonating. Resonating. The word felt safer than successful. At 6, the door opened to the first guests, a retired couple from Monterey who introduced themselves politely. A woman in her 30s who said she followed the gallery's page online. Two men in button-downs who looked like they were there out of curiosity more than passion. I greeted them one by one, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot." Questions came quickly. "How long have you been photographing?" 4 years, I said, mostly evenings and weekends. "What drew you to this theme?" Moments people overlook, the quiet work. The room filled gradually, conversations layered over one another. The faint hum of music Marcus had chosen blended with the soft clink of glasses. At 7:15, Marcus approached me near the back wall. "Piece 3 just sold," he said quietly. I blinked. "Sold?" He nodded once. Payment processed. For a split second, I felt detached from my body, then sensation rushed back all at once. The small red dot appeared beside the label. I walked over and thanked the buyer, a middle-aged woman who told me the image reminded her of herself at 30. "I did not know anyone noticed," she said softly. That sentence alone felt like confirmation. By 8:30, 4 pieces had sold. Marcus pulled me aside briefly. $9,800 so far. Stay centered." I nodded, even though my heart was racing. $9,800, real transactions, real people. Not encouragement, proof. Around 9, a woman with sharp posture and calm confidence stood in front of Available. She was dressed simply but elegantly, her silver hair cut precisely at her jawline. Marcus approached her with familiarity. "Margot." Margot Peterman did not look at him immediately. She studied the image for nearly a full minute before speaking. "She is not tired. She is deciding," Margot said softly. I stepped closer. "That is exactly it," I replied. Margot turned toward me. "How much?" $3,200, Marcus answered smoothly. "I will take it," she said, without negotiation. Then she looked directly at me. "I have a property in Big Sur, a retreat house. I need fresh photography. I pay $5,000 for a full-day shoot and usage rights." The number landed heavier than I expected. $5,000, I repeated. "Yes," she said calmly. "You have restraint. That is rare." I swallowed. I would be honored. Marcus's expression did not change, but I could see satisfaction behind it. Margot moved away, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and something else. Validation. I caught Aunt Ruth's eye from across the room. She raised her coffee cup slightly. "Told you," she mouthed. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel it. The room was warm. People were engaged. My name was being said in a professional context. Then my phone vibrated. I ignored it. It vibrated again. Sienna. I turned the phone face down in my hand and continued answering Lydia's questions. "Do you see this as political work?" she asked gently. "No, personal, which sometimes feels political." The gallery door opened again. I sensed the shift before I fully turned. Sienna stood in the doorway, cardigan wrapped around her even though the room was warm. Derek stood behind her, jaw tight, eyes scanning the space like he was assessing whether this was worth his time. Sienna walked toward me quickly. "Ilara," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk." "Tonight is my opening," I replied. "This cannot wait." Derek stepped forward slightly. "This is important, not just pictures." The word pictures was deliberate. I felt the old reflex tug at me. Step outside, smooth it over, reassure them. I did not move. "Whatever it is, it can wait until tomorrow." Sienna's eyes filled with frustration. "I'm pregnant. Derek is traveling constantly. Mom and Dad are not available. I cannot do this alone." I kept my tone steady. "I left over a year ago." "And you are still punishing us," she shot back. "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm working." Her voice sharpened. "Family should matter more than this." The room had quieted, conversations lowered over one another. Lydia stood a few feet away, her pen paused mid-air. Aunt Ruth stepped beside me, close enough that I could feel her presence without looking. Sienna leaned closer. "Come outside, please. Do not make a scene." Before I could answer, the door opened again. The bell chimed softly. I turned. My mother walked in first, composed and polished, pearl earrings catching the light. My father followed, shoulders squared, eyes alert. They had dressed for this. My mother scanned the room, taking in the crowd, the framed images, the red dots. "Ilara," she said evenly, "we need to talk, outside." Her tone was calm but commanding. I stood still. "This is not the place," she added. I glanced at the walls behind me, at the work that had taken years of late nights and doubt. "This is exactly the place," I said quietly. Her smile tightened. "Family comes first." The words hung in the air like a test. Sienna shifted slightly to stand closer to our parents, as if forming a united front. Derek folded his arms. Around us, people pretended not to stare. Marcus remained near the entrance, watchful but composed. Aunt Ruth did not step away. I realized then that this was not an accidental visit. They had not come to support me. They had come to retrieve me, and the room I had finally claimed as mine was about to become the line I either held or surrendered. Chapter 5. The tension in the room felt like glass stretched thin, ready to crack if anyone breathed too sharply. My mother stood directly in front of me, posture immaculate, chin lifted, voice measured. "Ilara, outside, now." "I'm not going outside," I said. The words came out calm, no tremor, no apology. For a second, it looked like she didn't process them, like refusal was not a language she expected me to speak. "This is not appropriate," she said, lowering her voice further. "Family matters are handled privately." "This is my opening night," I replied. "This is my workplace." Family comes first. The phrase used to work on me. It used to make me fold instantly. Tonight, it felt like a slogan printed on something I no longer owned. "If family comes first," I asked quietly, "why do I only matter when you need something?" A subtle shift passed through the gallery. Guests did not stare openly, but they were aware. A couple moved toward the opposite wall. A man near the window set his glass down slowly, eyes lowered but listening. Sienna stepped forward, frustration breaking through. "I'm pregnant, Tiara. I'm exhausted. Derek is traveling constantly. The twins are overwhelming. I need help." "You've always needed help," I said. "That doesn't mean I was included in anything else." "That's not true," she snapped. "You always make everything about yourself." Derek let out a short, irritated laugh. "This is dramatic. It's helping for a few months. It's not like this is some massive career." The dismissal was casual, almost bored. That was what made it sting. Behind me, I felt Aunt Ruth shift closer, steady without touching. Marcus stood near the entrance, watchful but controlled. Lydia remained a few steps away, not writing, simply present. My father cleared his throat, stepping slightly forward. "We didn't come here to argue," he said. "We came to talk. 5 minutes outside." "No," I said again. My mother's composure thinned visibly now. "You are humiliating us," she said. "I'm not humiliating anyone," I answered. "I'm responding." The silence grew heavier, not theatrical, real, the kind that makes every breath noticeable. My mother tried a different tone. "Ilara, please, don't do this here." I looked at her and understood something clearly. She was not asking me not to hurt her. She was asking me not to expose her. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The motion was small, but it shifted the energy instantly. Her voice sharpened. "What are you doing?" I'm not exaggerating. I'm not misremembering. I'm going to read what you wrote. Put that away, she snapped. That was private. You sent it, I said. You planned my life with it. Sienna's face paled. Ilara, don't. Derek muttered under his breath. Oh my God. I opened the screenshot. My thumb hovered for a fraction of a second before I began. My voice was steady. Keep Ilara in Illinois during the August trip. It makes more sense. She doesn't have anything important going on, and the kids are more comfortable with her. It's like having free help. We should take advantage of that. I paused only long enough to breathe. Then I continued. I think she'll actually like feeling useful for once. Just tell her it's temporary. The words felt colder in the air than they ever had on my screen months ago. Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable. My mother's face drained of color. How dare you, she said, voice trembling with controlled anger. Reading my email in front of strangers? They're not strangers to me, I said quietly. They're here because they see my work. Sienna shook her head quickly. I didn't mean it like that. I was stressed. You meant it enough to write it, I replied. Derek stepped forward. This is insane. You're acting like we abused you. I'm acting like I was scheduled, I said. Marcus spoke then, voice calm but firm. This is her event. Please lower your voices. This is a family issue, my mother shot back. And this is my gallery, Marcus answered evenly. The clarity of that line cut through the room. This was not their house, not their church, not their territory. My father inhaled slowly. I saw that email, he said. The words landed quietly but heavily. I turned to him. You saw it. Before your mother sent it, he admitted. I read it. And you didn't say anything? His jaw tightened. I thought it would pass. I didn't think you'd ever see it. That hurt differently. The email was cruelty. His silence was permission. You knew, I said. He nodded faintly. I should have stopped it, he said softly. I didn't. My mother stared at him in disbelief. Richard, stop. But the damage was done. The structure was visible now. The plan had not been a moment. It had been allowed. Before my mother could pull the narrative back, Margot Peterman stepped forward from the wall where she had been standing. I purchased one of Ilara's pieces tonight, and I offered her a commission. Her voice was steady, not dramatic, just factual. I'm investing in her because she has talent. I don't understand why her family expects her to leave her own professional event to provide unpaid childcare. My mother stiffened. This does not concern you. It does, Margot replied, when someone treats a professional like staff. If you need help, hire help. A subtle alignment moved through the room. No applause, no overt reactions, but the absence of support from my parents was unmistakable. Sienna's voice softened into desperation. Ilara, please, can we talk later? Not like this? It was already like this, I said. You just didn't have to hear it. My mother's anger returned now, sharper that control was slipping. You're going to regret this, she said. I regretted being quiet, I answered. The truth of that surprised me even as I said it. I had regretted it, for years. I looked at all of them, my mother's fury, my father's shame, Sienna's panic, Derek's irritation. If I was staff, I said clearly, staff has the right to quit. The sentence did not echo, it settled. My mother waited, expecting someone to correct her, to defend her. No one did. My father reached for her arm gently. Let's go, he said. She hesitated, pride battling reality, then turned sharply toward the door. She did not look at me again. Sienna lingered for a moment longer, eyes wet but stubborn, then followed. Derek shook his head as if he'd been inconvenienced by my existence and walked out behind them. The bell above the door chimed softly. The gallery did not erupt in applause. It exhaled, a collective release of tension. I stood still for a moment, my phone warm in my hand, heart pounding but steady. The adrenaline buzzed through me, but beneath it was something else, relief. Aunt Ruth touched my arm gently. "You stayed," she said. Marcus stepped closer. "Do you need a moment?" I scanned the room, the red dots on the walls, the faces of the people who had not left. Lydia gave me a small, respectful nod. "No," I said. "I'm all right." And I was. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and walked back toward the center of the gallery. A woman near the wall approached carefully. "I'm sorry that happened," she said softly. "Your work is powerful." "Thank you," I replied. I resumed answering questions about light, about composition, about why invisible moments deserve space. My voice was steady, my posture relaxed. I did not feel smaller, I did not feel ashamed. The evening continued, not because nothing had happened, but because I stayed. Chapter 6. The months that followed did not explode into triumph. They unfolded quietly, the way real change usually does. By March 2025, the sharp edge of that night at the gallery had softened, but it had not disappeared. It lived in me as a marker, not a wound. 7 of the 12 photographs from the exhibition had sold, $18,600 in total revenue. Under my agreement with Marcus, I received 60%, $11,160 deposited into my business account over several weeks. Each notification from the bank felt less like luck and more like confirmation. The commission at Margot Peterman's retreat house in Big Sur had been completed in January. I spent 2 full days there instead of 1. The first day for planned compositions, the second because the fog rolled in unexpectedly and transformed the light in ways I could not ignore. Margot did not rush me. She observed quietly, occasionally asking thoughtful questions about framing and perspective. When the final edited gallery was delivered, she wired the full $5,000 without hesitation and sent a brief message thanking me for understanding the atmosphere she wanted. That message meant as much as the payment. For the first time in my adult life, income arrived not because I was accommodating, but because I was skilled. In January, I sat at my small desk above Aunt Ruth's cafe and filed my first quarterly estimated tax payment as the sole owner of Alara Whitmore Photography, LLC. I triple-checked every number. I researched deductions. I confirmed mileage logs. It was tedious and slightly terrifying and profoundly grounding. I was accountable to the government, not to family expectations. I paid the amount due without resentment. In February, I signed a lease on a small studio space 3 blocks from the cafe. It was not impressive. 1 large rectangular room with wood floors, white walls, and a narrow storage closet in the back. A single east-facing window allowed morning light to flood in clean and direct. The landlord was a retired teacher who liked that I was an artist and insisted on showing me how to reset the circuit breaker, even though I already knew how. The day I received the keys, I stood alone in the empty room and listened to the silence. It was different from the silence of my old bedroom in Illinois. That silence had felt like waiting. This silence felt like ownership. I bought a second-hand couch from a woman in Monterey. I assembled 2 simple shelving units. I hung a framed print from the exhibition on the wall, not as decoration, but as a reminder of where this version of my life began. Family life adjusted without dramatic collapse. Sienna hired a nanny in December, $2,400 a month. She mentioned the cost during a phone call, her tone resigned but not accusatory. "It's expensive," she said, "but it's steady." I did not point out that stability had once been my unpaid role. Our conversations became shorter, less charged. She told me about the baby's ultrasound. I told her about a client inquiry. We did not circle back to that night, not because it was erased, but because it no longer defined every exchange. My mother's messages shifted in tone. They were no longer instructions disguised as suggestions. They were simple check-ins. "How is the studio? I saw a photography exhibit in Chicago and thought of you. The weather in Illinois is terrible, as usual." There were no hidden requests attached, No mention of summer plans, no assumption that I would return. My father sent an email in early February. Short, plain. I should have defended you. I am sorry. No explanations, no long paragraphs about how complicated it had been, no attempt to soften it with context. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Thank you for saying that. It was not a full reconciliation. It was a beginning of something quieter. Accountability without performance. I did not go back to Illinois. Not for holidays, not for guilt, not for obligation. The screenshot of the email from May 2023 remained saved on my laptop in a folder named Proof. I did not open it often. I did not need to. It was there as documentation, not revenge. A reminder of the moment clarity outweighed comfort. One afternoon in March, I sat at my studio desk reviewing my numbers, total revenue from the exhibition, commission income, upcoming bookings for summer. A local yoga instructor had inquired about branding photos. A small boutique hotel in Monterey wanted updated interior images. It was not explosive success. It was steady growth. I realized I did not want revenge anymore. For months, part of me had imagined a scene where my mother publicly admitted she had been wrong, where Sienna apologized in front of everyone, where Derek acknowledged my career as legitimate. I imagined some dramatic reversal of power. But the truth was simpler. I did not need them to lose for me to win. I only needed to stop being the backup plan. That realization felt like something unlocking quietly inside my chest. One Saturday morning, I arrived at the studio just after sunrise. The street was still. The cafe had not opened yet. The ocean air carried a faint chill. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Light streamed across the wooden floor in long, golden stripes. Dust moved lazily in the beam near the window. The space smelled faintly of fresh paint and salt. I placed my bag down and stood there, letting the quiet settle. No one expected me anywhere else. No one was waiting for me to cancel something. No one assumed I was available. The freedom was subtle. It did not shout. It did not arrive with applause. It arrived in ordinary acts. Paying my taxes on time, saying no without explanation, pricing my work without apology, answering my mother's messages without bracing for a request. I walked to the window and pressed my hand lightly against the glass. Outside, the sky brightened over the rooftops. Carmel was waking slowly. I thought about the version of me standing in my parents' kitchen in Naperville in June 2023, staring at a dark phone screen after being publicly assigned to stay behind. She had felt invisible in a room she prepared. I was not invisible anymore. Not because the world had rearranged itself, but because I had. Later that afternoon, I rearranged the studio slightly, moved the couch closer to the wall, adjusted a light stand, hung a corkboard for future concepts. I pinned a blank card to it with one word written in ink: ownership. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from Sienna. The baby kicked today, strong. I stared at it for a moment, then replied, "That's good. I hope you're resting." There was no tension in the exchange, just distance, measured and intentional. I closed my laptop and walked to the center of the room, camera in hand. The light had shifted now, softer and more diffuse. I raised the camera not to capture anything specific, but to feel its weight. Freedom did not come from my family transforming overnight. It came from me refusing to accept the role they had written for me. And if you have ever been treated as the backup plan in your own family, if you have ever been described as free help instead of a person of value, remember this: you are not free help. You just have not placed a price on your worth yet. If this story felt familiar to you, stay with me. There are more stories about women who chose themselves, and you deserve to hear them.